Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm going to talk about ICBC and what new changes are coming. Stay tuned. Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Labrie Borthasol. I am a realtor here in Kamloops, BC with EXP Realty, and I talk all things Kamloops country living. But if you live in Kamloops, you live in BC, so you deal with ICBC. Well, and if you drive. If you don't drive, I guess you don't deal with ICBC. But you might have. Anyways, so let's dive right in. On February 7th, ICBC announced some major changes. So they're going to switch to what's known as no-fault insurance, or the no-fault insurance model. So what is no-fault insurance, you ask? Essentially, according to an article posted in the Vancouver Sun, no-fault insurance means that people involved in crashes can no longer sue for damages, except in certain cases, but they can no longer sue for damages. Instead, they will be provided with the benefits and payments for the medical treatments that they need and compensation directly from ICBC in using amounts that are specifically set out by the province and depending on the type of injury. So this is a big change from the previous litigation-based model where you weren't guaranteed any services. You basically had to hire a lawyer and the lawyer had to sue for the services from ICBC that were determined by medical professionals that you required based on your injuries. So this is maybe a little known fact, but the previous model of ICBC operated at a pretty big deficit, simply because so much money was spent on these lawyers. These lawyers were paid by ICBC, and then the settlements were also costing a lot of money. So the province has determined that this should save ICBC about $2.9 billion. And that was money being spent on legal fees, on pain and suffering, and injury claims, and that should all be saved in the year 2022. So what they're going to do with the savings is 1.2 billion of that will be redirected to boosting the treatment benefits that claimants receive if you have an ICBC claim, and also quickening the response times from ICBC for following the requests for these treatments. And then as well, 1.7 billion of that is going to go to the one-time rate cut of about 20%. When we all go to renew our insurance, we'll get a refund of premiums paid. So if you're when your insurance renews this year, you'll be paid at the same rate, but when you go to renew in 2021, supposedly that's when they'll pay you back for this 20% rate cut. And this is an average of 20%. So, and the next point I want to make is a big one, because in my previous job, I worked as a kinesiologist, and a lot of my cases were ICBC accident victims who may or may not have been receiving exactly the services they were looking for based upon, or that they needed based upon how their claim was being handled by ICBC. So with this new no-fault system, it is supposed to boost the maximum lifetime care benefits that a person could receive from $300,000 to $7.5 million, which is obviously a huge increase. So that's good. Another thing they're promising to do is increase funding for physiotherapists, for chiropractors, for counselors, and other recovery services that you might need following a car accident. So the province also says that the individual's doctor and not ICBC will be making the determination of how long you need services for, what services you need, etc., etc. So going back to what the true meaning of the no-fault insurance really is, There are exceptions to the ability to sue for damages. The cases when you can are court convictions for offenses like negligence. In the case of the other driver, street racing, impaired driving, faulty manufacturing, botched repairs, and over service of alcohol by bars and restaurants or a business. And then the other thing to know is that pain and suffering is no longer available for minor accidents. Major accidents, it could be. So, and then the other thing too is that money for pain and suffering will be eliminated in minor injuries, but for major injuries, cash compensation will be set by categories of benefits with maximum amounts set by ICBC. So this whole, what does this all mean? This means ICBC is going to eliminate the role of personal injury lawyers that typically take 1/3 of the total amount awarded to their client, and then they represent a lobby group that fights the government reforms. The lawyers for that lobby group have argued that this system would leave the most vulnerable victims with the most catastrophic injuries alone to face ICBC without legal help. So what the lawyers, the personal injury lawyers of BC are really trying to say is that the only time now an injured person will be able to sue for compensation under this new no-fault model is that if the at-fault driver is convicted of being intoxicated, of dangerous driving, or another criminal negligence. So the important thing to know again is that although the system is called no-fault insurance, ICBC will continue to determine who's at fault for the purposes of penalizing the at-fault driver with higher insurance premiums based on their crash history. However, everyone involved in the crash will, regardless of whose fault it was, will have access to the same medical benefits, which for an at-fault driver would mean that they would get new care for things like permanent impairments as a result of their injuries from the accident. So as you can see, there's a lot that needs to be sifted through and in terms of what all these changes really mean, or what this major change means for ICBC and the car insurance industry in British Columbia. In lieu of how confusing it can be, Vancouver Sun actually put out a video that touches on the 5 things that you need to know about no-fault insurance. So I'll give those 5 things to you right here. Number 1, BC is moving to the no-fault insurance model, which means that in most cases you won't have to be engaged in a lawsuit after an accident to win damages. Instead, ICBC will just pay you those directly. Number 2 is fault will still be determined, but only for the purpose of punishing the bad drivers. So no matter who's at fault, everybody gets the same benefits. Number 3, these changes are going to become in effect on May 1st of 2021. So in the meantime, there's going to be a $5,500 cap on pain and suffering claims that for minor injuries. That will remain in place. And then the pain and suffering in major injuries will still be determined in court. Number 4 thing you need to know, in 2020, there will be 0 rate increases. And then in 2021, there'll be a 20% rate decrease. So these changes will save ICBC about $1.5 billion, and they're going to use that to boost the type and length of benefits that you would receive, like chiropractors, massage therapy, counseling, and your doctor's going to determine that and not ICBC, and they'll determine how long you get those benefits for and what type. So that about sums it up. That's what's going on with ICBC, and those are the changes that we can expect and we can thank the NDP government for, I suppose. And yeah, thanks for watching. Be sure to comment below if I missed anything, if you're confused about anything, if you want to talk about ICBC, rant, rave, what have you. Let's do it. So click that subscribe button and we'll see you next time.